up there on the stage. What can you see? Singing out of all the rage. I'm going to California. I'm going to California. I'm going to California.
Hey everyone, welcome to Big Blend Radio. So now if you are watching this on YouTube, you just got to see California. And this is it's actually the very first track from the new album, 9 Mile Station. And 9 Mile Station is the band name. And we're super excited to have Will Hawkins here with us. Will Hawkins recorded this with Fernando Perdomo. Fernando's been on our show before, and he's done so many amazing collaborations. And whatever Fernando does is like golden. And Will, tell us welcome, number one, but how did you connect with him in California, right?
Yes, Lisa, thanks so much for having me on the show. So I had actually stopped writing and performing for a little bit, and I went to go see this documentary called Echo in the Canyon on a midnight show. And I was kind of getting back into writing. But in watching that show, it's just such a great celebration of amazing songs that we all know and we grew up with. And then to see Jacob Dylan put this amazing band together to re-envision those songs and breathe some new life into them, you know, and bring them into a more contemporary kind of place was incredible. But then there was Fernando Perdomo, who was the lead guitarist for that band. And man, I couldn't take my eyes off him. And, you know, he's just such a powerful presence, and his guitar playing is the tone and the riffs are just so economical and memorable. I remember sitting in the movie theater, like just jaw dropped. And by the end of the movie, I was just like, man, if I'd only met someone like him 15 years ago, maybe he could have been the Mike Campbell to my Tom Petty. And, you know, I live my life with this belief that things in life that are meant for you will find you, you know? And at that point, I felt that my music career was behind me. And I was driving home a little melancholy, frankly. You know, I was just like, man, you know, I'm happy where I am, but only if something, you know, if I had met him before.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks go by, and a friend of mine posts something on Facebook, and he's in the picture and he's tagged. And then I friend him and I send him this note saying how much I enjoyed watching him in the movie. And he soon got back to me, and he had found some of my music online, and we kind of just had this mutual admiration society kind of meeting for a bit. And he's like, I live in Los Angeles and he's in the Valley. And he goes, well, I have my own studio up in the Valley. So come up and check it out sometime. And, you know, maybe we can find some time to play together. And I had been doing some playing with some young guys. And I don't know, maybe a month or two later, one of them, the guitarist, canceled on me like a day and a half before the show, like a Wednesday night.
Oh, dude.
He cancels on me on a Friday. He's like, yeah, man, I got a gig that's 3 nights and it's paying more. And I was super frustrated, but I was trying this new discipline of not expressing my anger.
How does that work?
It's fucking awesome. You know, I realized that whenever I express my anger, like the only thing that it may have made me feel better in the moment, but it didn't make any situation better at all. So I was doing some work on myself. And so the kid was just like, I can give you some names. I'm like, dude, go do your show. Yeah. You know, I'll figure it out, but it's all good. No harm done. Go do your thing. And in my head, I was like, I'm never going to play with him again. But there's no reason for me to start, you know, anything now. Big deal. So I'm sitting on the end of my bed. It's a Wednesday night, 11:30. And I'm like, oh, fucking hey, Fernando. So I text him, are you available on Friday? It's 36 hours from now. And do you think you can come sit in with us? And he's like, yeah, I'm free. Tell me where and when, send me some song files. And without a rehearsal, he shows up to the Cinema Bar in Culver City, and we blew the doors off the place. And not only did he and I have a lot of chemistry, he's got like this sixth sense. He learned my music and knew all the riffs and knew the backing vocals.
That's wild.
And it was like the first time in many, many years where I felt that as the lead singer, I could do my job. Like I could really do my job. And in the past, I always had hired guns that would come to rehearsal and play what they were supposed to play. And then during the show, play what they wanted to play. And as the lead singer, I'm waiting for cues. I'm waiting for riffs. And when I hear what I hear on what we recorded, it builds my confidence and it makes me excited. And so when I hear that riff drop before the pre-chorus, like my chest is full. So when he started doing that, I let go because I had trust that he was going to do his job, and he did that tenfold. And we were playing to a half empty room. And then by the time we got to the third or fourth song, you could feel the energy change. And the people who were outside smoking came in, and the people who were, by the time we got to our last song, which was Caught in the Rain, which is on this album, we had the people from the back garden. It was shoulder to shoulder. You could feel the floor move. And it was one of the most powerful live experiences that I was personally involved in my life. And Fern and I are like, we're checking each other, our eye contact, and we're leaning a shoulder to shoulder in on the solos. And it was like we had been playing together for years.
That's awesome.
So, and everyone in the band is just like, up until that point, we were a garage band, you know, just, I was doing something in order to kind of express myself. Right. I was coming out of, my mom had passed away, and I was doing music again to try to find some light. And I was, you know, stumbling through it. And then all of a sudden this gelled, and everyone in the room knew it. Everyone on the stage knew it. And after the show, Fern and his girlfriend and I were sitting at the bar. He's like, so, am I in the band? And I'm like,
dude,
yes,
Let's do it.
Yes. So that was November 1st, 2019. We did our next show together as a band with a violinist on January 29th, 2020. That week, we also went in the studio to start recording songs that would become this album. And we gelled even more in there once we got in the studio. And we're like, California was one of the first tracks that we recorded. And Fern turns to me and goes, this is a stadium show kind of song. And that set the tone for everything. We really didn't have an idea of what it was going to sound like when we got there, but with California, with those drums at the beginning, and just this soaring, like optimistic kind of driving, like I'm in a car going on an adventure. I'm on a journey.
I told you that's the first thing. I was like, oh, I need to road trip with this.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we're on a permanent road trip, but this is going to get played a lot.
That's amazing. And that was, so with that first song, that set the destination on our map to where we were going and what we were going to sound like. And then a month and a half later, COVID hits, and we had all these shows lined up, and we were all just like excited to like really gel as a live band, because even the live performances were so powerful. And I'm a big fan. I grew up with going to shows with Bob Seger and Springsteen and Nick Cave, where like they transport you to another place, and we, you know, that's what we want to do. So now all of a sudden we're all locked down. So we spend that quiet time in the studio. And for the first time in my life, I'm able to concentrate on being an artist. Like I'm an event producer and a marketer by trade. And that's been my day job for a while. And there's always meetings or proposals or business trips that are so, as much as I believed I was an artist and I was a writer, it was always just the bandwidth only allowed a certain percentage of that. And with the lockdown, all of a sudden I had all day. And over time, what happened was, like, I had some people I was contracted with, and we'd have our phone calls, but after a while that just drifted off, and we weren't doing anything. There were no events or trade shows during COVID. And I think the first couple of months we pretended that it was just going to be a couple months and we'd be back at work. So we all kind of did the job. But then after 3 months, we're like, we're locking in for a while.
Yeah.
And what that allowed me to do was I woke up and I wrote songs. And if I came up with an idea that I was excited about, I would text Fernando and I'd be like, what are you doing today? I got this idea. And then he's like, come on up. And then he and I would go up and we'd flesh out the song and we'd start doing the parts. And then we were very cautious of our health and everyone's safety. So
Sure.
we'd bring our members in one at a time and we'd do the drums. And then later that afternoon, the bassist would come in and we'd all be 6 feet apart and wearing our bandanas and our masks. And that went on for another year. And as we were starting to record, like we felt that it was gelling. We felt the chemistry. And I worked as a recording engineer when I was younger, and I had been in the studio with some real heavy hitters, and you feel that magic in the room sometimes, like a song comes on and everyone in the room just knows. And we had a couple moments like that. And then we mixed the songs. And again, we're in lockdown. We don't know what we're going to do with the music, but we're going through the process as if we would release it when we were ready. So we had two different people mix the songs, and neither of them really did. The songs they weren't energetic enough. They weren't jumping out of the speakers the way they really needed to. So when I was younger, I worked with a guy named Al Schmitt, who was a legendary mixer and engineer who worked with everyone. His first job ever was recording Mercer and Duke Ellington when he was 19 years old. Amazing. Worked with Frank Sinatra, Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Elvis Costello, Barbara Streisand, you name it. He was with Sam Cooke the day he died. He was with him that afternoon.
No kidding.
Yes. And he was supposed to go meet Sam for drinks that night. And Sam's like, I'll give you a call and let you know where I'm going to meet you. And Al didn't hear from him, so he went to bed, only to be woken up at 3 a.m. to be told what had happened. So Al,
that was crazy.
Al was part of history, part of music history. And I was one of his assistants when I was 22 years old. And I worked on a bunch of records, George Benson, Dr. John, Diana Krall.
Ah, sweet. Yeah.
So over the years, and Tommy LaPuma, another great producer, that's who I was working directly for. And Tommy and Al were like brothers. So Tommy became like a father figure to me and just was a mentor. And through Tommy, Al was like Uncle Al, where I always looked up to Tommy, like he was like the gentle father figure that I never had. And then there was cantankerous Al, funny Al, who was like Uncle Al. So Tommy died in 2017, and Al and I were at the funeral and the service, and we had stayed in touch, but we really reconnected then. And we stayed in touch because now I live in Los Angeles. So when we got to the point where we weren't really happy with the mixes, I was being really hard on myself, because I'm like, I know how to do this, but I'm clearly not articulating what I need to hear to the engineer, because we're not getting it. So I felt like I had to take some responsibility for not being able to deliver the message in a way that could help us get to where we need to go. So I called Al. I was like, look, man, here's what's going on. Here's who I'm working with. We're really excited about the music's really good. Do you think you could take a listen to a couple songs? Just give me some notes. Can you help me articulate what I need to tell the engineer to get what we're not getting? And he's like, and we're on the phone, and he's like, yeah, I'm in the studio with Neil Young for the next 2 weeks. We're working on a box set with him.
Jesus.
And I'm working with Niko Bolas, and I loved Niko. Niko worked on the first 3 Melissa Etheridge albums. He's worked on with Neil Young. This Note's for You. He produced Shelby Lynn's Grammy-winning record. So the two of them were working on the Neil Young project. So he's like, I'm with Niko, and send me the songs, and I'll take a listen, but give me a couple weeks. And I'm like, yeah, man, take your time. So I hang up the phone, call Fernando. I'm like, dude, Al Schmitt's going to listen to the songs. He's going to help us. And at this point, Fern and I barely knew each other. And there was some friction between us because he didn't hear what I heard, and I couldn't tell him like what we needed to change.
Oh, yeah.
So we were at one of those points early on in any relationship where we're trying to trust each other, right? We're trying to find ways to communicate to each other. And I'm not doing it very well. So I don't think that he trusted what I heard, because I couldn't use my language to explain it.
Yeah.
So I said, look, I used to work with Al Schmitt. I just sent him the songs, and he's going to come back to us with some notes. And Fern knows who he is. So he's just like, how the hell do you know that? And we went through the whole, I worked with him and all that. As I'm talking to Fern, the phone is ringing on the other line, and it's Al again, maybe 20 minutes later. And he goes, look, my wife and I are driving in the car. I'm listening to the songs that you sent me, and they're great. He says, they're great songs. He's just like, send me the song files tomorrow. And I'm like, and what? He says, I'm going to mix them. I'm mixing them.
Cool.
And dream come true. I mean, being 22 years old and being in the Hit Factory and being in the power station and watching them do what they do and thinking, man, one day I would love to be able to be on the other side of the glass. And now all of a sudden it's kind of how he goes, me and Niko are going to work on it together because we're together working on Neil. So we're going to work on this together. So we started off with California, and I don't know, maybe a week later, I was sitting on the same place on the couch where a week before I was just so bothered by the situation. And now I'm hopeful. And he sends me a text, check your email. I go in and there's the song file. I put it in. And from the first 10 seconds, it's doing everything it's supposed to do. It's soaring and it's clear. And you hear the dynamics of all the instruments across the room in front of you. And they're not muffled. They're right where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, but it is perfect because the bass in there, the bass and the drums just is like this glue where it's not like high on treble. It's not, it just, everything locks in really well. I think it's really interesting about you're talking about the communication part. As a songwriter, I always battled trying to, because I had all this stuff in my head. And like there's bells and there's all kinds of weird stuff happening. And, you know, how do you tell, especially the band that I was with, which I had to leave, because everybody broke up on stage with a big fight. It was great.
That's so
it was
cliche.
classic.
That's great.
No, it was so classic. Drummer wanting to put drumsticks up certain things and places to the other person, and it was classic. But to communicate, I don't know if it was being a female versus all men, and trying to go, no, this is it. No, you can't do this. I'm like, bullshit. I can do this. This is my song. So I had to move on, and I did move on. And I worked with people from Candide and Moby Grape and all of that stuff. So I learned, but that communication part is it's so difficult, because how do you tell somebody what you're hearing in here and what's in your, you know what I mean? That's hard. So how did he know? Does he know you from before that Al know? How did he know?
Well, Al taught me how to mix, you know.
Okay.
Al and Tommy taught me how to mix and like what it's supposed to sound like. So when I think of like where my zero is, or where my like where things are supposed to be, it came. So I just went to the source. I went to the source of who taught me like in the first place. So, and the other thing that someone like Al Schmitt has that the average person doesn't is a $50,000 preamp that someone gave him, you know. And the gear that he has in his studio, like beyond the ears, and also working on 500 hit songs, 1,000 hit songs.
Yeah.
Knowing what radio is going to play, knowing like where the bandwidth of all this stuff, where it all needs to fall. He created it. Like he set the standard. He built the standard.
Yeah.
So part of me was like the short period of time in context of that I got to work with him when I was in my 20s. You know, he went on another 25 years after that, getting better at his craft. He was already amazing then. And then in the 20 years that we parted, he continued to do great records and continued to use new types of technology to enhance what he was doing. So I trusted him, just knowing that he knew what the standard was supposed to be. Right. And I have whether it's making music or in creating even events or writing, I have this kind of sixth sense of seeing something that isn't there. Right? And there's this silhouette in my head that I always try to find reality to match up with. And if it's just a little bit off, I see the corners. And it can be a real pain in the ass to work with me at times.
Are you a Virgo?
I am a Virgo. Yes, I am.
Takes one to know one.
Yes. And we're
We are a pain in the ass.
We're a pain in the ass. But there are certain I feel grateful that I've found ways to make a living exploiting or enhancing these traits of mine that make my partners and my friends crazy. But when it comes to being detail oriented and making sure things are what they're supposed to be, I have this ability to see things that no one else sees, or hear things that no one else hears. And there's been times where we're doing a mix and I hear this little, like maybe a stick on the side of the drums or a mishit on a piano. And I'm like, zero in on that. Let's get rid of that. And they're like, well, I don't hear it. I'm like, well, for the rest of my life, I'm going to hear it. I was like, so for my mental health, for every time I hear the song, I said, but someone else is going to hear that too. So if we have the ability to fix this, then let's fix it, you know? And I think the way that Fernando and I work, we're very different types of people. And as far as Fern works really fast. And I'm like, well, let's go back and make sure that let's isolate.
But this is the beauty of a relationship.
Yeah.
Like I'm Virgo, annoying. Nancy, my mom and partner, she's a Taurus, so she's a bull. So we're both. So there's that. But it is that. It's like, just get it done. Don't wait. I'm like, no, we have to wait for this to be perfect to do that. No, get on with it. So that's really good creative balance when you have those kinds of relationships.
And Fern hears and sees things that I can never see because of his musical talent.
God, he's amazing.
And he's on another planet. So, so one of the things that I wouldn't necessarily call it a rule, but one of the things we try to do is, like, when I come bring a song in, we have that conversation where I'm like, let me get what I hear in my head out first. Let me do that. Let's both listen to what is in my head, and then let's collaborate from there. And if something is there that's worth keeping, great, let's build on that. But if something comes out and it's, you know, it's all over the place or it's not cohesive, okay, cool. Then our collaboration starts there on where do we take it from here. But I was like, please just let me work to get what's here out in the world.
That's so hard.
So I can at least feel that I've left it all out there, and that what my imagination, and a lot of times what I hear is what ends up on the record. And then there's songs like Fall Into the Sea, where
I like that.
There's, and Fern's prog rock background marries into Americana so well on a track like that, because there's so many layers to that. And it's supposed to, that song is about a dream. It's about a dream. I'd been engaged with someone. We had some problems. We broke up. For a long time, I blamed her for those issues, for straying. And then after a while, I had to realize that I had to take some accountability for myself for not giving her for what she needed in that relationship. And she felt she had to go get it somewhere else. I'm not saying that I'm justifying going to cheat or not, but given her personality at that time in her life, she needed something very specific from her partner, and I wasn't giving it to her, and I wasn't listening. So there came a moment where I had a dream where I saw her in my dream, and we had a conversation in that dream. And when I woke up that morning, I forgave her, and I looked at myself differently, and this song came out. And this song is about not just taking accountability, but also, like, with like a wink, like not taking yourself too seriously, but also taking accountability at the same time. And there's a line that, you know, sometimes what I love is, like, fast food, it always looks so much better than it tastes. You know, it's like we all think that what we have is, you know, it's like you're getting this sumptuous steak. It's like, nah, it's fucking Wendy's burger. You know, it's just like, so that song is really about going from one chapter to another, taking accountability and learning about myself, and taking a piss out of myself too. You know, but the choruses and the they say things will come in threes, and here's the Santa Monica Pier, it falls into the sea. And I was living in Santa Monica, and where she and I were living, we could see the Santa Monica Pier from our window. And for me as a New Yorker, it represented so much to me of being in California. So that representation of this marriage that didn't happen and my life in California just tumbling into the sea, to me, was very poetic. And, you know, and a lot of these songs on this album, like represent renewal. They represent self-realization and hope and optimism. And
Perfect timing for now too.
yeah,
I mean, I think everybody's going through that right now in different ways after the pandemic, and there's so much change going on in the world across the country. I mean, lots of stuff we don't even caca stuff is happening. So, so that rebirth and renewal is always something that we tend to forget as individuals, to that it's okay. Like when you're saying you can have an aha moment about yourself, or, hey, I didn't do this, or I should have done, could have, should have, would have. Fine, learn from it, but don't sit and don't dwell in it for 10 years and kill yourself over it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Move forward. So that's cool.
And I'm a student of Stoicism, and Stoicism is about responding to things you can't control. Where the control comes in life is the way that you respond to the things that happen. And keeping that emotional and physical balance where you don't make things worse, and living in the present, and not letting the past get in the way of your future, those things. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to live in the present more and just follow the open doors, so to speak. Right.
Cool.
And so I had stopped playing for 8-9 years, and I had 2 solo records in the not in the 90s, the 2000s, 2003 and 2007.
That does feel like the 90s though. It does.
And it opened up a lot of doors for me, and it got some radio, but it wasn't as life-changing as I thought it was going to be. And some other opportunities came around in my marketing career. So I kind of left the music behind, and it was kind of like an ex-wife to me, where I was just like, I had taken so much of myself to put into it and just felt exhausted by it. So having something creative like event production still made it feel like we were like I was being creative, but I was getting paid pretty well for it. So my mom had a stroke in 2017, and I went back to New York to take care of her until she passed away 8 months later. And while I was doing that, she was in the hospital bed, and she was recovering. She was paralyzed for a while on her left side. And I would just sit in the room with her quiet. And I stayed off my phone, and we didn't have the TV on. I just let her have that peaceful moment. And so I would just close my eyes, and I would have these movies running in my head. In my imagination, I would think about a band that I was on tour with. I was just trying to find things to think about that were hopeful and optimistic, because there was so much sadness in the room. And I was, I knew I was going to lose. I knew my mom wasn't going to recover from this. I knew, and even if she was able to live after this, she was no longer the same woman that we knew after the stroke.
No quality of life. Yeah.
So, and I was, as her caregiver and all that, it was overwhelming every day. So when I had those quiet moments, I tried to think of things that made me happy. And I remember being on the road and like playing festivals and not knowing what the next town's going to bring, and how much excitement that was. So I would just close my eyes, and I would just think about these people I didn't know yet, going to towns I may never have been to, and thought about being and it just made me smile, and it gave me something hopeful to think about. And I knew I needed that band to have a name. And one of my favorite bands at the time, and some friends of mine, were in a band called Escondido. And they're from Nashville, but that Escondido's in Southern California, and they would wear these like Graham Parsons kind of and I just loved.
I used to live outside of Escondido.
Did you? So
Vista.
I loved this universe that they created, not just with their music, but with the way they looked, and picking a destination for the name of the band. At that time, that was what I was thinking about. So I started looking on my phone at other towns' names in California, and I couldn't find anything. And then this went on for weeks. And one day I was on a website that listed ghost towns in California by county. So I wanted it to be a certain part of California. I wanted it to be in the desert. So like, I just kept looking, and one day I saw 9 Mile Station, and it was the number 9 Mile Station. And I was like, man, it doesn't look quite right. And at one point I was playing around on Illustrator, and I created that, and I changed the 9 to the letters against backdrops, started playing with the fonts. And I'm like, that's the name of the band. And so moving forward, my imagination, I was in a band called 9 Mile Station.
Crazy, because like that's like a whole Bob Marley thing too, right? And
Oh,
it's
I
like a
didn't
whole
know that.
Jamaica. Yeah, and
No,
I just interviewed a restaurant in Asheville, North Carolina called Nine Mile. It's
I had
like,
no idea. No,
yeah,
I'll have
no,
to look that.
it's a whole well, everybody's happy. Let's just put it that way. It's a
Wow,
state of happiness.
come on,
Seriously.
really? I had
Yeah.
no idea. That's incredible.
And it's all Jamaican, Caribbean food and stuff. Yeah.
Wow,
I'll say he's out in the Montfort Historic District of Asheville near Billy.
that's incredible. I had no idea
Yeah.
that. So that's even more about it, because then
Yeah,
it
because the,
created
the
these.
desert is, well, the desert, right? And we used to live out in 29 Palms outside Joshua Tree.
Yeah,
And the desert is like Wonder Valley. And if you go into all those little tiny ghost towns, like you're talking about, Nipton
yeah.
and all of that stuff, there's a trippiness to it, man. It is,
I'm a huge fan.
there's a, yeah, I mean, there's something about the desert where it's like when we lived up in the mountains, I mean, we're all very happy.
Yeah, and I was at the time, I was one of the stage managers at the Joshua Tree Music Festival, so I was spending a lot of
Out in the
time.
RV park?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I
I
do a
know,
lot of
yeah.
that too. So all of that was just like part of the inspiration of it. So then once mom passed, I wrote a lot of these songs, and I was dealing with so much sadness and loneliness that I didn't want songs that were sad and lonely. I had buckets full of sadness and loneliness. So the songs that came out of that were about, like I said, hope and reinvention, optimism. And whenever I played, my mom was in the room with me, and that's what I needed. And she was a big fan of me performing and me being a musician, where my father was a policeman. He was more pragmatic, and he wanted me to have the job with the 401k. But my mom was always just, love when you do that, you know?
Aw.
And so he passed in 2005. So I found myself almost like an orphan, and I pulled my guitar out of the closet, and I was just doing that to make me feel better. And then Nick, our drummer, he and I met through some friends, and he was the first person to come in and play with me. And we were doing some shows. I was like, look, I don't want this to be a solo project. I want to be in a band. I want to be in a group of people where I want to go someplace with some people. I don't want to do this alone. And he was like one of these guys who got paid for every show, and he was playing with 10 different bands, and he wasn't one to do things for free. And he bought into it. He was the first person to buy into the idea, and I sold it to him.
That's
and like,
awesome.
I was like, we're going to play festivals. I'm like, I have a background in music. I was an artist manager. I know radio. I was just like, I'm not just your typical songwriter. I know this business. Come with me. Come with me on this journey. And we had this other bassist, and she was great, but she was also playing with Hamish Anderson, Lauren Stockner, and she went on the road with Hamish at the time. So we brought in Brendan to play while she was out of town, and the three of us hit it off, you know, and we played with a couple different violinists until we had some that ended up being more regular. And then when Fernando came in, like I said, it was just like, it went from,
Magic.
hey, let's do some shows. Let's see what happens. To then Fernando came in and became that glue and that engine. Like, I may have been like, we all play different parts. Like, I may have had my hands on the steering wheel, and Nick might've been holding the map, and Brendan was in the back doing maintenance. But then our car finally had a fucking engine that could get us up the hill. That engine was Fernando Perdomo. And once we put that fucking turbocharger,
boom. That's awesome. But that's the magic. And having the right people, because a band is like a marriage. I mean, going back to all of that, it is. And it's like the communication a lot of times is not even spoken. It's hard. It's its own sign language, you know?
Having a relationship with one person is hard. We come from different backgrounds. We have different expectations. It takes time for us to be able to get on the same path when it comes to how do we communicate, right? And even if you have that instant connection, that only lasts for so long. And now the deeper you get in with someone, the more intricate and nuanced those issues that come up between you are.
Right.
And the more seasoned, or the more like being able to navigate through those things, the more you have to put time into it. But then you add 4 more people into that, and you're all trying to stay on this journey with this band, making something very specific, when everyone has their different ideas of what this is going to be. And through negotiation and time, you slowly hone that message and that sound, so everybody is on the same road together. And even every once in a while, there's someone in the band that, takes an exit off that highway. And I got to be like, oh man,
dude,
you got to get back. We got 4 more exits to go.
Yeah.
Let's, but when you're doing the same songs and you want your listeners to hear the riffs, you want your listeners to know it's second nature. So when they hear it live, they have that religious experience they have when they're listening to it at home, and they're like,
it's a familiarity. Yeah.
And they're waiting, and right before the pre-chorus, there's a little riff. And when they do it live, you're like, fuck, I love that riff.
Yeah. And that's the thing when cover bands go out and do stuff and don't put the riff in, people get pissed.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, where's that part? You didn't play the part.
I was saying this to a friend this morning before I talked to you, and we were talking about this. I'm like, if you went to go see Tom Petty and they were playing Breakdown, and instead of it going da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, da-na-da-na, you'd be like, that's not the song.
That's not it.
And so
where would Cocaine be without the whole beginning? Like,
right.
would not be it. And
what ends up happening, and I say this when we play live, the thing that makes singing in choirs and singing along together in churches that is so powerful is this shared experience of 100 people in a room carrying each other with these hymns. Live music is no different. Rock and roll are the hymns for us. So the point of we're all singing those songs together the way we know them to be creates that community and that excitement between us. And we, as the pastors on stage, it's our job to make sure that they're there with us.
Exactly.
And it's with this band, it's been one of the best experiences to be on stage and for us to have those moments where we have the room with us. And I make every show we end with Caught in the Rain, and I break it down and I have everyone join in. And there are times, and it's a trust fall, because like I've been to shows that are like, okay, we're going to have you sing along with us. I'm like, fuck you. I ain't going to sing this song with you, but they have to be with you the whole time. Right. It's not just in that moment. You got to carry them with you from the first note to then, so they believe it. So when we get to that Caught in the Rain, I usually like half the room will get it. And then I'll come down off the stage and I'll leave the microphone on the stage and I'll sing a cappella, no matter how big the room is. I'll stand in the middle of the room. Come on, I'm with you. And I'll grab someone, put my arm around them. And there is yet to be a time in 3 years where we do that song where we do not have the whole room singing with us by the time we're done. And everyone, there's not a single person who seems jaded. Everyone is, and it's a simple enough chorus. I got caught in the rain and I can't get home. It's just like, and it's this call and response, and it's church. And it's just like, and it's a church with a God that only wants you to have fun.
It's a rock and roll church.
That's it. Right.
It's the party. It's the musical party, and people need it. I mean, everybody is it's like, I'm like, stop listening to the news and listening to the same headlines 10 times. Just go and listen to music. I mean, when you get pissy or upset about anything, you need music. And and I always remember that. Or if I'm like creatively in one of those weird zones of like, because my brain does 10 things at once, and that means nothing really good is happening, then I need to like zone. So I go into music or into nature, one of the two or both. And then everything comes back to normal. And so it's music is part of our spiritual being. It's part of our makeup as humans. It's our animalistic side.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's our life buoy at times too. And as I've gotten older, I've changed the way I write my lyrics, because I want them to be personal. I want something there for the listener to have, but I also want something for them to have for themselves too. And if you can write it in abstract enough a way where they can fill in the gaps with their own experience, then it becomes theirs. And when what it means to me doesn't matter anymore. And I can tell you that when I perform, the way I perform, I live every lyric. When I'm done with a show, I need 15, 20 minutes, because I just went through 45 minutes of my diary and every experience that I had. But I want the listener to be able to fill in and create their own movie of their life with this being a soundtrack.
Well, that's even the truth, even like when we do interviews with, musicians, the last thing I want to do, I had to learn this, because like, oh, what made you write this song? And what's this all about? Well, actually, the listener, don't screw it up for the listener. You know what I mean? The audience needs, I mean, there's stuff that you want to hear the background, like we've been talking, but it's, if a musician starts dictating what the story is about, that happened to me in English class, like the poetry guy, we were doing poetry and this is what this means. And I'm like, oh, well, to me, this means this is this. No, you're wrong. And I'm like, screw you,
Wrong.
I'm out.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as wrong. There's no such thing as taking in a piece of art and having your own opinion. That's what art is for, whether it's a book, music, dance, I don't care. It's supposed to make you feel and think and boost creativity. And if I want it to be that, if there's a painting that's all red and I see it all black, it's all black to me. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Screw it.
And when I was younger, after I was an engineer, Tommy LaPuma, Al Schmitt, and I were working on a Diana Krall record. And Tommy was like a father figure to me, and and his whole family was just so good to me. And I remember him saying to me over lunch one day, "What do you want to do with your career?" And I was like, "I want to be an A&R."
Well, at least he didn't say when you grow up.
No, but he goes, but I was like, I want to be an A&R, and that's the cool job, you're hanging with the artists. And he laughed. He goes, "Of course you want to be an A&R." And he's like, "Look, you already know how to make a record. We've been in the studio enough. You know how records are made. You know how good records are made." And what Tommy used to do, which was amazing, and when I produce, I do the same thing now. Tommy didn't sit in the control room. He sat out in the live room with the band. And he would sit on a stool or he would sit on the floor. And when it came time in between takes to talk about what worked and what didn't work, there was no glass partition between him and the band. He was there working with them. And Al was in the studio, and he would communicate to Al, and then Al would make that happen in the control room. But I loved the way Tommy he interwoven himself into the band. So they would have those intimate conversations and nothing was lost. Right. So Tommy had this.
And that energy is united. It's unified.
He's part of the band. He's in the band when they're doing that. And Tommy was just such a really, really gentle, amazing, supportive guy. He wanted you to know what he knew. He had all this confidence in himself, no insecurities that you're going to take something from him and usurp him. Like, that's a leader. That's a mentor,
Yeah.
So he's like, "Look, I hear you." He says, "You know how to make a record now. So you need to know what sells a record." So this was a Thursday, and I was 24, 25. And he goes, "Starting Monday, you're the director of college marketing. Figure it out."
Sweet.
And I remember going back into the house studio of MCA at the time and telling my boss that I was no longer going to work there. He was furious because, but that Monday I had an office downstairs, and I was in the marketing meetings. And I remember one time I was working with Jonathan Brooke from The Story, who I was a big fan of, and they were doing her first solo record, and it had gone out and it didn't do great. And, but the record was great. It just, the marketing radio effort wasn't amazing. So in our first marketing meeting, Tommy looked at me, he says, "Okay, what's the first thing you want to work on?" And I told him, I said, "I think Jonathan deserves another shot. I want to take her back to radio." And that's money. That's money.
Yeah.
And he goes, "All right, make it happen." And everyone in the room kind of laughed because they thought he doesn't know what he's doing, but it was a really great learning experience for me to understand how everything worked. Long story short was, they said, "Look, if you could get 20 stations to add the record again, we'll put her back on the road." I got 25 stations.
Oh, sweet.
And everyone in the room was like, "What?" And Jonathan went back on the road, and she toured with Joan Osborne, and she toured with the guys who wrote God was one of us with her. I can't remember the band right now, but they were really big at the time. And then she got to do a bunch of shows with Carole King, who was her.
Ooh.
So
yeah,
all of that happened through Tommy believing in me. All that happened for her. And then all of a sudden, by that happening, people trusted me off the bat. And that started my marketing career. And I've done A&R and I've done that, but like marketing, communication, messaging, that's where my career has lied. And Tommy LaPuma gave me that opportunity. Everything I have today is because of Tommy LaPuma. And now everything what I have musically is due to the belief and trust and generosity of Al Schmitt. So those two men have had such a big part of my life as a man because of a relationship I started when I was 24 years old.
But this is a good point in communication and friendship and trust, right?
Yeah.
It's an important thing about that, in that when somebody gives you the freedom to be who you are,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and so that you can grow and allow you to screw up and make a mistake. Because if you don't make any mistakes, you're not going to learn anything.
Right.
You know?
And to recognize what someone's good at. I've had conversations like this with people I've worked with where they would criticize someone else's work. I'm like, look, if you're the one getting mad at a fish for not knowing how to ride a bicycle, is it the fish's fault or is it your fault for not recognizing where the talents lie in that person? So if you're putting somebody in a situation that they're going to fail in because they're not built to do that, then whose fault is that?
Yeah, exactly.
As a manager, as a band leader, as a producer, we have to find how people can thrive and to understand not just who they are, but also understand what their motivation is and what their experience is, and then set them up to win. And sometimes setting someone else up to win means that you don't get the winning basket, someone else does. But again, that's a true leader, is knowing that in the end, it's all about we all win, as opposed to me getting a personal win. It's all about us as a group getting.
Oh, good. Can I send you to Jeff Bezos? Oopsie, sorry.
So the guy who's running Amazon right now went to my high school, and
Oh, no way.
yeah, he graduated a couple of years before me, and his wife is one of my classmates, and
Oh, no way.
he is now running. He's the hand-picked successor of Amazon.
I'll be nice then.
I don't know him that well.
So I mean, you got to get your music on there too. So everyone, the album is out July 21st. So 9 Mile Station. You can go to 9milestationmusic.com, but they can save it, right? So hearing this early, they can get it through YouTube and stuff like that, and on Spotify.
So we've got a single, Who You Love, that's coming out on June 9th. That's coming out. I don't know if this is going to be out before then.
This is going to be out after June 9th.
Okay,
yeah.
so by the time you guys,
and we are recording this on a Sunday, so he's been zapped.
So
lightning came down on you.
By the time you guys see this, of course, Who You Love will be in your ear, and you'll be singing along to it as you wait for in the anticipation of our new album that's coming out on July 21st. You could find it on all streaming and online stores. Our website is 9 Mile Station Music. All our socials are at 9 Mile Station Music. We have songs that are up on YouTube as well, and we'll be out doing some live shows.
And you need to go perform at 9 Mile High. It's 9 Mile High.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Where you need to go.
And then on July 29th, I mean, music has brought so much great people we get to meet, right? Now, like music just continues being the gift that keeps giving. And on July 29th, we'll be performing as a band at the Troubador for the first time.
Sweet, nice.
And this has been a lifelong dream. And every band you've seen at Madison Square Garden or Wembley, they all made their way through the Troubador to get there. So it's a big thrill. And we're really excited to share this new music with you all. That was mixed by Al Schmitt and Niko Bolas. It was one of Al Schmitt's last projects before he passed away in 2021. And we're just really excited. And I'm so thrilled to be on your show today, Lisa. Thank you so much for spending some time with me.
It's been fun. It's been a good conversation for sure. Now, it's a good Sunday conversation, isn't it?
It is.
It's about rebirth and renewal. And we went to church. So
yeah, we did. And
we went to church.
And the gospel is the gospel
it's
actually
translates.
Yeah, the gospel translates to the good word. And the good word today is 9 Mile Station.
but I do want you to go perform at 9 Mile High in Asheville, North Carolina. You got to go do it. I think that's important. Everyone, 9milestationmusic.com. We're going to close with Caught in the Rain for those watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to the audio, you can also go to youtube.com and find 9 Mile Station Music on there, or just go to their website and you can see the videos we're talking about. Thank you all for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thanks, Will.
You got it. Nice to see y'all.
Well, here's a little story that never gets old. About a man and a woman and a pot of gold. There's a mall somewhere She's the prettiest damn thing, and everyone knows. She runs around behind his back whenever you know he's not home. And you know he's coming home real soon. And when he does, you better give that boy some room. I got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home to you. Well, I know it ain't fair, no, it ain't right. He works hard all day and she stays out all night. Yeah, that other shoe is gonna drop, and when it does, there's gonna be a fight. And you know he's coming home real soon. And when he does, you better give that boy some room. Yeah. I got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home to you. And you know he's coming home real soon. And when he does, you better give that boy some room. Yeah. I got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home to you. I got caught in the rain. I got caught in the rain. I got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught in the rain and I can't get home. Got caught